we have very little time for our Q&A, but I'll have the 6 morning speakers come back up. We're just going to stand because we have so little time. And come on up, guys. And we have a mic right there on a stand. So if anyone has a question for our 6 morning speakers, clarifying questions, how did you do it? Did you implement this? Did you test this? This is our time to get any kind of clarification before we move into the working sessions in the afternoon, which will be focused on hearing your ideas. So, Susan, I think you have a question. You're about to stand up. But yeah, we have a mic right here. So please go stand at the mic so everyone can hear you. Dan, if you want to go to the mic. Great. And Miho and Julie, you're going to come stand next to me because you're going to share this mic.
Okay. It's a question for Carl. You said you're focusing on autonomous taxis, and I'm wondering whether you've looked at the business model for autonomous shuttles, which it sounded like from the Boston plan was really kind of a key to providing greater benefits to the city in terms of reclaiming space and reducing emissions.
Mm-hmm. So we have explored that, the business case. For a number of reasons, we chose to focus on the taxi opportunity, largely because it's a bigger market, opportunity. There are a number of companies in the AV space that are focused specifically on the shuttle. The core technology that you develop for a taxi is actually going to be quite similar than that for a shuttle. What differs is really the vehicle configuration, and then of course some elements of the use case, letting people on, letting them off in the shuttle case. In the taxi case, one of the difficulties is how you pick up people and drop them off. So really just a business decision rather than a technical one.
Great. Next question.
This is also to Carl. My name is Chris Davis, GridSmart Technologies. Looking at automated or autonomous vehicles, you read a lot about infrastructure to vehicle communications, and I'm just wondering, is that an area that you guys are looking at? I'm curious because I don't find any real world examples of any significant development done in that area, trying to figure out, what's the problem, what data do you need, what should be communicated to the vehicle from, an intersection or street or corridor.
Yeah, it's a good question, I think, for people in this room in particular, and on the podium here. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing. It's difficult to develop a system that relies on the infrastructure, the vehicle to infrastructure communication, since that's not, generally speaking, widely available. If it were available, of course, it would make the systems, the cars, a little bit safer and smarter and behave in a more human-like fashion. And so if there were a part of, let's say, a city like Boston, like Singapore, that said we've got this area that's outfitted with this technology, would we try to use it? Even then, it's not a slam dunk, because you'd say, well, sure, it'd be great in this part of the city, but we can't rely on it. So it's a kind of a complex a set of factors there. And from our perspective, we're also a little bit skeptical that if there were a complex V2I build-out in some part of a city, it has to be there then on an ongoing basis and be maintained and be supported, and that's a difficult proposition.
One quick thing to add to that, sorry. So in addition to sort of like high-tech infrastructure, I think a lot of what we're interested in, I think Carl's slide sort of speaks to this, is just how do you design your streets so that they are comfortable for the pedestrian, comfortable for the cyclist, so there's good connections to mass transit in an autonomous vehicle. Well, the autonomous vehicles alone may reduce crashes, but they may not actually create that sense of comfort and safety that we actually want on our streets. And that there's a lot of thinking, I think, that we collectively need to do around sort of roadway design and infrastructure that really can support autonomous vehicles in a way that is also sort of putting first and foremost sort of pedestrians and cyclists.
Great. Let's take 2 questions right after each other so we can try to get through them. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Rene Bastone. I'm the Executive Director of the Northeast Big Data Hub. And I'm trying to get a sense in the landscape of transportation about data. How accessible is it to you? How available is it to you? It sounds like you answered part of the question there for autonomous vehicles. But what are the biggest challenges that you have? Because it sounds like everything that all of you up on stage are doing is very data intensive.
Great. Let's take the next question, and maybe we can combine them.
Good morning. I'm Wendy Landman from Walk Boston, and I actually want to go to the non-technology side of the world, which is the human beings. And I think one of the components that I hope all of you are thinking about, and who I actually think really should be in the room, is the world of public health, who is which is making some of the biggest change on the ground in a lot of communities around active transportation, walking and biking, and thinking about that side of the equation, which I think is absolutely critical to building the world that we want to be building. And so it's sort of I don't know if it's a question or looking for comments about how each of you are thinking about integrating that, what's happening in public health.
Okay, great. Matt, you look like you're excited about one question.
I can take a quick shot at the data question. It's true that, especially in areas like Massachusetts, the quality of public data available for transit in particular is pretty good. There's a few data sources, especially as the landscape changes to more private mobility services. I don't think anyone has gotten it right as far as going to the private mobility companies, especially Uber and Lyft, who are in a highly competitive space, and having the right ask to sort of demand the data that would serve the public interest as a condition of sort of operating in public. I think there's a lot of opportunities and some risks there as more of the mobility system becomes privatized. That both planners and regulators, but also the public are going to end up not well served by the sort of data matrix that we have.
So the one thing I would add on data is there are a few things that make people more worried from a privacy perspective than the notion that the government knows where you're traveling. When we went to go to all electronic tolling, which is a great technology that has produced less congestion and therefore carbon and higher customer satisfaction, the only issue really that we heard about in the public process was, what are you going to do with that data? Are you going to sell that data? Are you going to track me? And the same is going to be true with the data we're going to generate when we go to the new automated fare collection system on the T. So we are very much, not just at MassDOT, but the Baker-Polito administration, very committed to open data, try to put as much stuff out as API feeds as we can so that everybody has sort of the same access. But the two issues that I think that we're all struggling with are how do we use data in a way that allows people to feel comfortable on the privacy end, and then how do we capture the growing amount of data that's being generated by private operators and who are not necessarily particularly willing to share that data.
Julie wants to say something about health.
Yeah, 2 seconds on data. It's the one thing I'm most concerned about with the current federal government is the loss of climate data. Even recording climate data over the next 4 years is a big concern. But in terms of public health, Wendy, you mentioned something very important. Chris was mentioning how the blizzards really spoke to the fragility of our transportation systems. It also gives us insight into how incredibly different our vulnerabilities are by class. So somebody who's a single parent, kids in college, kids in school, minimum wage job where they don't get paid if they don't get to work, can't afford a taxi, those blizzards were catastrophic. And somebody who could work from home, they weren't. And so the climate disruptions we're going to see really exacerbate those economic vulnerabilities that then lead to public health vulnerabilities for our populations. And those are invisible to most of us decision makers because we're not vulnerable in those ways.
Great, Susan, question, and then let's hear the 4 questions because we have to transition to the working sessions. Sorry, we're running out of time, but Susan, go for it.
No worries. This is a question for Chris and Stephanie, and I guess Carl as well. I'm interested in the AV technology and how public infrastructure is going to either be funded or taken care of at the state or city level, and what is infrastructure going to look like with these technology changes. And as I was standing listening to you speak, I was a little bit worried about privatization of AV vehicles and having it be just another car share service that is going to be unequitable, as has been stated by the panel as well.
Great. Let's hear the next question, but maybe we can combine them. Great.
Actually, I am combining them a little bit. Jason Schreiber and Nelson Nygaard. I really want to go to the next step on that question, which is the state has just doubled its investment in transit. There's tons of investment in autonomy, and as the world of AV shuttles are providing potentially great opportunities, and it seems like they're on the curve faster than private AVs, what is that going to do for equitable distribution? And as the state or its private partners really thinking about the fact that if we do not have the right investment in traditional public transit down the line, even though it may be more economical to invest in AV, are we going to leave a lot of people on the curb? And how can we overcome that inequity?
Great. Do we want to just address it very quickly? Let's hear the next question. Maybe we can combine 3 questions.
Roll.
Or 4.
You're pushing your luck there.
Hi, I'm Lily Song. I'm a senior researcher with the Transforming Urban Transport Project at Harvard Graduate School of Design. I was really inspired by what Miho was saying about with climate preparedness and or risk, being more aware of risks and responding appropriately, working with community groups and neighborhood organizations. And I was thinking about for those of us who are interested in transforming transport and mobility and accessibility, that so much of it is about public awareness and behavior change, and whether and how you're working with sort of mediating groups and organizations and institutions, so that it's not just working at the individual level, but kind of building on existing organizations and sort of more social units.
Okay, thanks so much. Next question, and then we'll let you guys go for it. And that'll be our last question.
So mine might be a little orthogonal to the others. I'm Chris from MIT. It's mostly for Stephanie, I suppose. You referred to the fact that, well, we don't have much money to build anything, much less maintain. And I'm now, given your experience as the secretary, what are your prospects for us fundamentally reforming transportation finance in the state? Because to me, it seems as the most fundamental piece to maintaining services equitably and efficiently. Thanks.
Okay, let's go to you, Secretary Block. You can combine a couple of those questions.
Public transportation is a mechanism for allocating subsidy to make trips affordable to people who need them most. That's all it is. There are 13 transit agencies in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and exactly 1 employs anyone to drive or fix a bus. The other 12 are fully privatized and have been since they were founded, right? So the key to public transportation is how we flow money, both on the operating and the capital side, so that we subsidize what makes sense to subsidize, and we subsidize less what can stand more on its own 2 feet. And so there is an argument to be made that the single most important, the transformative technology for the next 5 years in Massachusetts is not AVs. It's actually new fare collection technology for the MBTA that will actually let us have smarter subsidies, because we have literally been fighting our own technology to put a youth pass into play, to put a better student pass into play, to even imagine a world in which you could have some kind of income-based fare system. Like we can't. But in David promises 2020, we're going to have a fully deployed new automated fare collection system that, by the way, will also take credit cards and contactless credit cards and debit cards and not even require specialty cards. But where specialty cards come in are for population. So I think, the question, again, and it comes back to priority setting, because honestly, on the capital side, for the next 3 to 5 years, thankfully, because we raised the gas tax 3 cents and the legislature authorized a series of new bonds and authorized an accelerated bridge program, we have a fair amount of capital to spend, and we're not spending what we have, and we also don't have the plans in place in terms of what kind of fleets we want to buy and how we want to do it. But the one thing I would just say to you is public transportation doesn't have to look like the Blue Line. I mean, part of it should look like the Blue Line, and I think we should be clear that we need to figure out how to make subways work, because BRT is just not going to carry the volume. You're not going to move as many people as the Red Line will at peak as soon as we have the new fleet and the new signals in place. Just not. There isn't any other technology that moves that many people, but that's one form, and buses are one form, and autonomous shuttles are one form, and bus rapid transit is one form. But all of them are fundamentally just a question of which ones do we want to subsidize at what level, so that the price point that the customer actually sees is the price point that is sensible from a economic development, social equity, and an environmental point. And then if we can wrap our heads around that, then there's a lot to talk about of what do we want, do we want to subsidize autonomous shuttles? Do we want to subsidize transportation network companies? Again, we're really good at deploying 40-foot buses that come along every 15 minutes on fixed routes. We're terrible at deploying one vehicle to go pick up one person and take them to one destination, which is what paratransit is, which is why paratransit is such a natural fit for transportation network companies because honestly, they have smarter technology than we do to figure out how to effectively deploy a fleet of vehicles to pick up one person and take them to one place. So I'm not going to tell you there are no money problems in the world ever, but I am going to tell you that we have more problems of imagination, bandwidth, priority setting, technology right now than we actually have problems in the short term of money. And if we can kind of answer the question of what kind of system we want, and how we want to deploy it, and how we want to make sure that it is affordable and that we have the capacity to move people in the places where it's most important to move people, then we can have the conversation. I love transportation. I love all my friends in this room and outside. I've also worked in public health. I've also worked in affordable housing. In the rest of advocacy, they start by talking about what they want and then what it will cost. We tend to sort of start with revenue, and I got to tell you, outside our little world, it's not a very compelling conversation. So let's talk about what we want, and then we can figure out what it costs, and then we can figure out how we pay for it. But let's not start with how do we pay for it.
Right. Chris, anything to add around the equity, infrastructure, financing, or anything?
I think there were really good questions raised about what's the impact of AVs on transportation financing, what's the impact of AVs on equity, what's the impact of AVs on the infrastructure we're building today. I think all of those are basically fundamentally policy questions that it's really useful for us to try to get out ahead of, and it's, I feel like, what the entire afternoon session is largely about.
Great transition. Love
Yeah,
that. We can talk about the community questions as well within these working sessions. So we're a little behind, so there's going to be 6, the number 1 through 6. This is page 2 of your printed program, by the way. You have 10 options. The first 6 will be in this room, so everyone will stand up, take a coffee and bathroom break, and when you come back, you'll see signs on 6 tables in here for these 6 sessions. Then we have group 7 is going to be in that corner near the windows in the orange chairs. We're going to call that orange chair lounge. This is actually different than the printed program. We decided to spread people out more so there's less noise impact from different groups on each other. Number 8, access for the disability community. That is going to be in the green chair lounge, which is out that door to the left. There's a little room right behind us. So I will keep these slides up, and the volunteers are all trained, and the staff to tell you where these are in case you're confused. Number 9 is in the addicts room, which is out past registration where you entered, and working session 9, and then working session 10 is also back there in the Adams room. So you're going to have, we're going to rotate 4 times. You can choose 4 of these 10 working sessions. There's 12 chairs at each table. If all the chairs are taken, we ask that you move to the next one. We don't want 20 people standing around. And if you're really, really excited about a working session, get there early, and you'll have another chance the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th working sessions to get in there. So really, give us your ideas, give us your solutions. This is solution oriented. There's a facilitator we've been talking to for a year about how to do this. Let's get to work. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, warning speakers.